I have a question to pose to you here today. Would you prefer if comics sort of had this renewal of the classic, good old, heroes, the best of the best, heroes teaming up sort of theme, or do you prefer the newer, grittier kind of solo heroes who are flawed like regular people and who have to deal with some of the darker and grittier side of life? We never responded on our preference for trends and blah blah blah.
Let's do it!
I think the tendency to make comics a little more darker and gritty can work as long as you balance it out with a healthy amount of humor and well-rounded characterization. Just having a dark, gritty Batman who punches the shit out of things does not make for good characterization. Having a dark, gritty Batman who punches the shit out of things and then has actual romantic encounters with other people, spends time with his family,
and then punches his family and his romantic encounters in the face.
As long as there is that well-rounded aspect, I think it's fine. I'm not gonna lie, I do wish there was more of a balance, though, between sort of the dark, gritty storylines and some of the more fun, irreverent storylines, because I think, just like life, there's room for both in there. So I don't think you should lean one way or the other. I don't think everything should be Darwin Cook levels of everyone smiles and hold hands and high fives. But I also don't think it should all be... I don't actually have a reference. I love Scott Snyder.
I know he's good, but all his stuff is dark. It is not happy stuff.
I will say that is the only complaint I've had about the current Batman run. It's been really, really good, but I feel like we haven't gotten much Bruce. It's been mostly Batman.
I kind of like that though, because as much as he is accurate in what he's saying, I have to disagree. Only because personally, I find that it's not so much everything's all grim and dark. It's just there's certain titles that need to work with a more grim outline.
Okay.
There's some that need to be happy and upbeat. If you read Superman, you're not going to expect him to be going after everyone and be like, "Oh, I'm so sad and dark." It's Superman.
You do expect it to be a subtle depression because his family is dead and people are all dead,
yeah.
But it's always got the lift at the end where I'm Superman, I'm always happy. Yeah. I'm not always happy, but I smile and people make.
And then Batman is a very darker hero, and he's not super. He comes from a very terrible place. He was a happy child in a terrible place until a terrible thing happened to his good people in the terrible place, and now he's a terrible person in the terrible place cleaning up the worst people. And it's just a darker storyline, so a darker area, and things are kind of tangent to it, can be lighter, but they always have that gravitation to a darker story. While things that orbit Superman stuff, Supergirl stories, aren't as they're storyline wise darker,
right?
But they're still more upbeat. There's still a happiness to it.
Yeah.
It's still light. Where even the happier storylines for the Bat family, they're still very dark in tone.
The Future Said Batgirl, where the moral of the story is, oh yeah, sure, her husband died, and she became some sort of Bat-Bane fusion, and then proceeded to beat the shit out of Bane for a while, but she still wants to live, and that's really nice.
But it's a darker tone, and I just think, as comics are, pushing forward into a more mainstream medium, we're going to see a lot more of these darker stories, because it's going to reflect what more people would like to see in these heroes. And it also reflects the fact that the people who are reading these stories are growing up in society. As society becomes more shifted in what we look at and the issues that we're tackling, then our superheroes and our heroes in general need to shift how they address their issues.
I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you in the exact same way that you did, where everything you said is right, but I feel especially in a society like ours, where we do have threats of terrorism, threats of unrest, threats of chaos, and then we have these increasingly darker responses to these problems, drones, bombings, blah, 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 innocent lives.
Oh, yeah.
I think in our media, obviously we shouldn't sugarcoat it. We should have reflections of that, especially in our heroes, showing how they would deal with it. But I think it's important to have, like I said earlier, that balance of optimism as well, because even if you have someone who grows up with that sort of a storyline, if you see that storyline, Dark City, happy childhood, suddenly your parents die, and each and every time they turn into Batman, then that says to you, well, if I'm not Batman, then obviously I'm living my life wrong. So I think you need to see some heroes who have the same experience happen to them, but then grow up to be Superman, who grow up to be Wonder Woman, who grow to be these characters who are inherently optimistic. Not that Batman's not, but these characters who emphasize and who cherish, love and warmth and stuff like that. I think it's important to see that any kind of person can bloom out of these situations. And yeah, so again, we were both agreeing with each other.
It's pretty much different perspectives, but we both agree that there has to be a balance between them.
Right.
Just we have different ideas of where the balance is maintained.
Right. So yeah.
Also, just to touch on that, the one thing that kind of contradicts me, but also kind of contradicts you, is Gotham Academy.
Yeah.
Where it's super upbeat in a really terrible place, but addresses none of the main issues, but is also really depressing.
But again, I think we need something. We need something nuanced, that it
It's
has.
like, I'm sorry, what are we talking about here? And we already talked about that.
Yeah.
He talked about that. I thought what he thought pretty much.
Huh?
If you were on a team with Aquaman, who in the New 52 is legitimately awesome, would you be offended if your team was called Aquaman and the Others?
I'll take it.
Would you be offended
I like this
by
question.
being addressed as one of the Others from Aquaman?
Oh my god, we should do this. One serious question, one humorous question. This is amazing. Yes, please tell us and we'll answer on next week's episode.